Benjamin here, let me see. Benjamin here, look at his, this is his little lot of land or plot of land. And I shouldn't say little. I really shouldn't say little because this provided for them for their life. Okay, so his. Then we have Simeon here. We also we have Zebulun coming up to Zebulun right up here. Issachar right here. After that, we have Asher, Nephthalah, and then we have Dan. But then I said, so thinking about where Joshua was, here's Ephraim, here's Joshua. So Joshua's land was right up here, or his inheritance was in here, in this part of, okay? Something I thought about is, I know we talk about, and Pastor talks about Ziklag, and he has this one sermon that and Ziklag, just taking a look back and thinking about Ziklag and where Ziklag is, okay, in this, okay, I'm sorry, y'all. I go, look where Ziklag. So here's where Ziklag is. So Ziklag is in, like, it's what, Simeon or Simon, and then Judah. Just thinking about where he was and where, you know, when he gives that sermon. Just now we can actually have a frame of reference, right? And have a frame of reference. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead. I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Okay. That was part of a couple of things I was going to say. One thing I was noticing as I was looking at the little tinier pieces, some ended up with like 4 or 5 cities, but most of them ended up with in between 10 and 12 cities within there, which kind of I thought was symbolic of the tribes or their birth year. And then the other thing I was looking at is, you know, when he promised to Abraham, and that promise just went all the way down through to Joshua. And then you asked the same question I did, which was, why did Joshua not get anything to the end? And then he had to help divide his stuff up between some of the other people. And I thought, well, are these supposed to be the priests, or were the Levites the priests, or were they doing this because they were maybe the older ones who were going to pass, you know, within a shorter amount of time? I couldn't figure that out. And then the other part, when you asked about borders, where Simeon got part of Judah's land.
Right.
And I was like, wait a minute now, if I was them, I might would have been like, hey, that's mine. And then when I saw Ziklag, I said, oh, okay, they're supposed to rest there. Stop. Okay, I got you. So, but I was just saying, those were like some symbolic numbers I saw repeating. And then like the division of the lands was still with the 12. And then most of them had 12 cities. And then like you said, like at the end, then I thought, well, is that what everybody's supposed to do? Take care of Joshua and the other people in that? Because I couldn't figure that part out.
Well, remember they were taking care of basically the Levites, the priests. And it's interesting that you should say that too. Were they taking care of him as well? Or go ahead.
No, that was it. Because I was going to say, because it kept saying, and it made sure to say, if you look at it in both of them, when they talked about Joshua, they kept saying the son of Nun, the son of Nun. And I'm like, okay, so we really emphasizing Joshua as the son of Nun, but everybody else wasn't really emphasized who they were. So what's the significance of that? I'm done.
No, you don't have to be done. I mean, I agree. It's a good question.
It's a question out there. I'm done. I don't know the answer.
It's a good question. It's a good question. It's interesting to say, really, what was the emphasis on that? Or was the emphasis, so something that I just read or just said was just thinking about all that they had went through and had gone through to get to this point. And now with Joshua, and he's now receiving his portion, is this now Joshua's rest? Is this now time for Joshua to rest?
Maybe it is.
Okay.
Because he's done distributed everything and helped navigate, all the distribution. And now he's, everything is settled. Now I can, get my portion. But I'll take care of everybody else first. like he has done from the beginning of the chapter, seem as though.
Right. So, being that leader and making sure that everybody has what was promised to them as far as their inheritance. Now that is done, now I can rest and settle down myself. Right? Don't you think it's time? Don't you think it's time? He deserves the rest now.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I was gonna also ask that since he is resting, because I know they never finished conquering all the land they were supposed to do. But I figured, like Sister Donnie saying, yes, there's time for him to rest. So maybe that's just why the rest of the story and the division took place then. Because I don't know what is chapter 21 our last chapter?
No, we had chapter 24.
Okay. Because, when he got old and he's like, I'm old, okay, I'm ready to pass. He couldn't keep leading the battles, and neither could they. And, some of them had some trickery involved. So I guess he wanted to make sure it was settled while he still had time to oversee it too, following, of course, what God said. I don't know, but
right.
Because it says they did it before the Lord. So that would make me seem like, okay, they did it so that it's settled. But if they conquer more, they would know exactly where their borders would at least stop.
Right. Right. So, and then how come, and these are just speculations because we don't know, why did he just get, it sounds like just a little plot of land, you know what I mean, versus having this big lot. So he got like a little plot or something versus what was, why is that? What, and we'll probably never know. But maybe it was just like as the Levites, he was the leader at that point in time. And maybe at this point, they should be taking care of him because he's older and he's considered, you know what I'm saying? It's just a thought. That's all. Just a thought. Don't know. So any other thoughts or any questions? I know we just went through that, just looking at those.
Well, kind of, and trying to study this because it's kind of confusing, but I was always looking at it that these are the children, these are the children that getting all the inheritance, like Benjamin and Zebulun, all those are the name of the children. And of course, their offsprings that are being divided up in all these different places. And maybe Joshua took a smaller portion because maybe that's all he needed, because I'm sure everybody was indebted to him for having navigated all this distribution, because that was a massive job in itself. And it kind of goes to show you how,
you throw it back up.
Some people may have more and some people may have less.
Right.
And knowing you're in either category. So if you have more, you share with somebody that has less.
Okay.
And maybe, maybe Joshua was content with what he had, but I'm sure people were, like I said, indebted to him and maybe gave him whatever he needed or wanted.
But isn't it interesting though? I mean, which agreed, we don't know. So we don't know that particular portion. And I didn't read about Joshua's, we know that, but where was his children in this and that plot of land and that kind of thing, thinking about that. But I'm just looking at this particular map and I'm thinking about where they started from. So if we just thinking here, they started, their headquarters were in Gilgad. They actually crossed the Jordan into Jericho, but then look at all of this. That was quite a bit of land that they, their inheritance and that they received. That was quite a bit of, and as long as they continued. Any questions on 19? Any questions on 19?
Was this a rest for everyone at this time? Once everything was distributed, was this a time for rest? Because I think in chapter 18, they put, they made a thing for God. What is it called? The temple, or where they worshiped him?
Shiloh.
Shiloh?
Yeah. That's a good, I'm not sure if it was arrest for all of them. I know it was arrest for Joshua. Not quite sure if it was arrest for all of them, but I know it was arrest for Joshua. Okay. So I know it was one for him. I'm not quite sure about everybody. Because 20 tells us something a little bit, I'm not sure. I'd have to look at that. I have to think about that one myself. We don't have the guru with us, or the what you call it? The historian. Do we have a historian? Historians with us? I'm not sure if that was it or not. It's a good question. Does anybody know?
No, but another thing I want to point out is that I know when we study these chapters, they're all kind of like significant. Like Joshua was kind of like a type of figure, like he was a leader, but he also was kind of like a person that, you know, how Jesus was. He came and, you know, he did all this. He helped them conquer. He helped them distribute the land. It seemed like whatever they needed, he was the, you know,
the go-to guy. Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, and then they talk about the 7 tribes. I mean, that might be significant in some, you know, form or fashion.
Right. Yeah, like as Sister Sai was saying, those numbers. Those numbers are those numbers significant? So significant with the number 7. So are we in the completion like this number 7, or like the 12? You know, what's the significance of those numbers? Which be nice to look up and think about. Okay. Right. Side. You're going to have to mute yourself. Side. You have to mute yourself. Okay. Just 1 minute.
Baby, I can do.
Okay. She can undo it when she come back. Okay. So moving forward to chapter 20. Now, chapter 20 is a short chapter. So in chapter 20, I think there's like 9 verses. So that, okay. So in chapter 20, what we have is the Lord also spake unto Joshua, saying, speak to the children of Israel, saying, appoint out for you cities of refuge. Okay. Whereof I spake unto you by the hand of Moses, that the slayer that killeth any persons unaware and unwittingly may flee thither, and they shall be your refuge from the avenger of blood. And when he that doeth flee unto one of these cities shall stand at the entering of the gate of the city, and shall declare his cause in the ears of the elders of that city, they shall take him into the city unto them, and give him a place that he may dwell among them. And if the avenger of blood pursue after him, then they shall not deliver the slayer up into his hand, because he smote his neighbor unwittingly and hated him not before time. And he shall dwell in that city until he stand before the congregation for judgment, and unto the death of the high priest that shall be in those days. Then shall the slayer return and come unto his own city, and unto his own house, and unto the city from whence he fled. So if we listening to this or think about this, what does this sound like?
Like,
Go ahead.
It sounds like, did they not have the 10 Commandments? I mean, what is going on here? I mean, did they just like go rogue or what?
So it almost sounds like, I'm not sure if it's rogue per se, but it almost sounds like a court system.
Right.
Almost sounds like it's a court system. So God.
So are they setting up a court system now? Is this what this is? In
Pretty
verse
much.
20?
That's what it sounds like. Yeah. Yep. So God tells them, or he tells Joshua, to set aside these cities. Okay. And these cities, I think it was a total of 6. I got to set aside these cities for those who are, as it says, guilty of accidentally causing someone's death. So I don't know what accidentally causing someone death would be. And how do you determine that it was accidentally done? Because it says any person's unawares and unwittingly, you know, how do you determine that? And then he tells them what the rules of these cities of refuge should be.
Were the city of refuge like jails?
No,
I mean, well, I
doesn't
wouldn't
sound
say
like,
jails.
no, doesn't sound like they're jails. It just sounds like, so it was David, was it David, or who like ran to Ziklag, or you know what I mean? So I'm running to get away until I can have an impartial, almost like I can have an impartial judge, you know, to prove that this death or what happened was, you know, an accident. So that's what it actually sounds like.
Okay, so after the book of Joshua, we have the books of Judges, right?
Right.
So maybe after going through all this, then they had judges to kind of do it away with the refuge cities. I'm not sure. I never peeked into chapter 20. So I'm kind of, you know,
so that's
direction.
So that's what it just sounds like. They're high. Sai, are you? I'm just trying to make sure I can take you off of mute, okay? Because I know you were on. But it sounds like that this is what this is, almost like they're setting up this judicial system. That's almost what it sounds like, you know. And so you go before the priest to see, and they determine if you're innocent or not. And if you're innocent, then you can go back to your home. But you can't go, and you can live safely in this city of refuge. That's what it's like. You can live safely here, but I can't go back to my home until that high priest is gone, is deceased. That's what it sounds like. So it sounds like they're setting up some kind of trial or some kind of judicial system in this particular first 6 verses. That's what it sounds like. Okay. So if you think about this, here is those 6 cities of refuge. So, and something I read called it the sanctuary from the avenger of blood. So here is those six sanctuaries. You have Kadesh, you have Galen, Shechem, Ramath Gilead, Hebron, and Bezar. So these are those 6 cities. So these are those 6 places of refuge in those verses, from those verses. So these were those cities. So as verse 9 says, these were the cities appointed from all the children of Israel, and for the stranger that sojourned among them, that whosoever killeth any person at unawares might flee thither and not die by the hand of the avenger of blood until he stood before the congregation. So his congregation, would that be a jury of his peers, as we say? Which is basically what it sounds like. So it sounds like, you know, we'll hold him here in this city until we deem that it was an accidental death type of thing. So technically, someone asked, are they done then? You know, are they done, or is it a rest for everybody? So it doesn't sound like it's a rest for everybody. Sounds like it may be. No, it doesn't sound like it's a rest for everybody. Doesn't really sound like it's a true rest for Joshua, really.
Right.
If we look at it, it doesn't really sound like it, because God told him to set up these cities or set aside these cities of refuge. So it sounds like I just have my place, but I'm not, you know, I still have to, there's still some things to do. There's still some things to do. That's what that sounds like.
Well, I'm just thinking, you know, okay, they done did all this battling and they done got out of the wilderness and now they're settled. And so did they forget about the 10 commandments? Were they not going to church every Sunday? I mean, and you know, you have a group of people, you know, like millions of people living, you know, so you know, things are gonna happen, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that's why they had to come up with these cities of refuge, right?
So, because remember, they're not only just them from that traveled from with Joshua and Moses and that group and, you know, their generations, they have now intertwined or intermingled with other people. Because remember, what chapter was it? Was it 18, 17, 18 that Joshua told them, kind of like, okay, what's wrong with y'all? That's y'all land, go get your land.
Okay, and I guess we have generations within generations now.
Right.
So if they haven't been taught, then you know,
because some of that maybe there's some that, you know, they did, but not everybody. Because remember, the older generation, really, a lot of the older generation, it has passed on.
Right. And so Joshua, you know, he's from old school, you know,
Right. Mm-hmm.
so to speak. And he had to kind of maybe probably set up something real quick. Look, we're going to do this. This is how this is going to work. You know, I'm sure he collaborated with other, you know, people to help figure out how this thing was going to work. But
I'm sure, but you know, a lot of that in between what actually happened, and that kind of leaves us to have a little imagination, I guess. But you know, what truly happened, you know, so we don't have the in-betweens, you know, just like we thought as far as the battles, they talking the battles when we were reading or talking about it early on, you know, thinking, okay, did these battles happen one after the other? And we found out that these battles actually took like 7 years. So how long is it in between me giving, let's see, Benjamin his lot versus me giving Simon or Simeon his lot versus Dan getting his lot? How long of a time span was that versus after they got it and then Joshua got his? What's the time span in between now that we set up these cities of refuge? And did something happen that we set up these cities of refuge? You know, what was the purpose behind setting up these cities of refuge, really?
and who are the strangers?
Right.
Who sojourned among them? Were they like you said, you know, since they didn't really kick out all the Canaanites.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I mean, did the Canaanites look like the Israelites? I mean, could you tell or?
Right. So not only it was the Canaanites, not only that, the Gibeonites, remember all of those different groups. So those that you know, that wanted to be a part, basically because they knew they were a blessed people, you know. And what part of the Israelites actually fell to that group of people that caused them to have these cities, you know?
What about some of Ishmael's, would Ishmael's people be intermingled with this? Because maybe there was some generational curses going on back then, and you know, they knew, look, they had grudges.
Maybe. Could very well be. Don't that portion, you know, how we'd have probably read something in another portion of the Bible that actually brings us back to this portion that will say that.
Right.
You know, that actually connect those things as to why this happened, you know. So any other questions? Because I said we're going to do 19 and 20. So we do 19 and 20, and that was the end of 20. Yeah, it was the end. You know,
well, does 21 shed any light on 20?
You know what? I have started looking at it, but I haven't gotten through it all. But that's I don't think what I'm looking at. No.
I was gonna say in 20, I might have missed something, and you may have said this already. We had a quick emergency.
Mhm.
It was interesting that they set up that they distinguish between what we call it, unintentional murder
Right.
and murder, and I don't even, I think that might have been our translation of the Bible, because I don't know what they called it here looking at the other one, but it was all like unintentionally they killed somebody, and then intentional. So it's like, if you're trying to come back and avenge and they didn't do it, don't you even try it, because
Mhm.
here's where it's a sanctuary, don't even try it. But if they did, then the people are going to judge them, and then that's what's going to happen, because it was almost like they're going to hide in here to your wrath settle, and you
Right.
know not to come in there,
Mhm.
and they'll judge whether it was intentional or unintentional, and you just wait. So I thought that was very interesting, and it was, God appointed people to be the judges of that.
So that's almost like a little makeshift judicial system.
Well, it not a makeshift, but probably just their judicial system as it was, because I think they already had earlier, like if somebody do something, they already had established certain laws for that. But yeah, this was like,
remember, this is that same group. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
no, you're good. You're good.
This is that same group, like Sister Downey said. This is that same group that was with Moses and got the 10 Commandments.
Right.
So what happened with it? It begs to differ. What happened with them and the 10 Commandments?
Oh, good point.
So I mean, you know what I'm saying?
That's the Downey question.
That's what she's asked. That's what she asked. Didn't they have it? Didn't they have it? Did they forget? What,
Well, maybe that's why it said thou should not kill. So because they were the avenger of blood, but it wasn't intentional. So I'm not sure what they meant by, what kind of things happened that they called it unintentional. But
Agreed. That's that is, and as we said, there may be something that we might read down the line somewhere that actually explains it a little bit more. Why they develop these cities of refuge for that reason. Right now we can only speculate that possibly because they had, different sects of individuals in there that didn't have the same things that they had. Maybe that's happened. We can only speculate, so we have to see more about these cities of refuge. I'm just gonna
and just thinking about that, maybe even when they were in the wilderness, they had to have some kind of judicial system, right?
Something. Yeah, I'm sure something. Not they needed something. We don't know exactly, but yeah, something. But I guess now that everything is, we look at it now that they've truly, I guess, are starting to settle. If Joshua is starting to settle, I guess we are getting to some point where they are going to have their rest, and where everybody have their rest. And if they have their rest, then this is just that they are starting to put those things in place that they need, So he did what? Shiloh, that temple, so the tabernacle, so they got that. Now this is this. Now, where else, what else do we need? Because we also have, depends on where our land is, we already have, the streams or the springs, remember? And then the wood and those kind of things. So we already have our living, or our, what I would say, our economical or, financial living, or those things, our livelihood.
Right. And then you also want to live in peace.
Right.
Because there's been so much, that they had to do, bloodshed, killing, and getting rid of, different, getting rid of the people in the land that didn't belong there. So, at some point in time, you just want to take a rest.
Right. And yes, because they've been through a lot. So when do we really get our rest? So now that's chapter 20. And that was it for chapter 20. So we did do 2. We did 19 and 20. So we actually got those done. So we need to do, we'll do 21. And next week for sure, 21. I won't say 22, but we'll try to get there. We'll try to get there. Anybody have any questions or anything? Got anything they'd like to say or anything?
Well, I'll definitely be going back over 20 to kind of find out what, that kind of was all about. I didn't really study chapter 20, but I will.
Okay, those cities of refuge. I want to look at that. I want to look that up myself, knowing those cities of refuge. What was the purpose behind the cities of refuge? I'd like to know that myself and look at that. Oh, I have something that says, okay, I have here's something that I have. It says, when God requests that Joshua set aside cities of refuge for those guilty of accidentally causing someone to death, he also told Moses to do the same thing in Numbers chapter 35.
Okay.
So we should look at Numbers chapter 35 and see as well. Okay.
How do you accidentally kill someone? But that,
Don't know, but that's
Yeah.
it.
yeah,
Okay.
that's-
All right. If that's all,
Yep.
that is all. So love you guys. We will see you all
We love you.
on Sunday.
See
So
you on Sunday.
I think I got my TV.
be blessed. We love you.
Love
Thank you. Good
Remember,
night.
chapter 20, good night.
Good night.
Good night. Go get you some smaller glasses. Come on, honey.
Come on, honey.
All right. That means, okay.
Okay, I'll stop too.
Oh, I'll go back to bed.
No, honey,